Aloha and welcome to Is This For Real? I'm Gregory Dunn, your host and President and CEO of Hawaii's Better Business Bureau. Today we're really fortunate to have Thresa Kee with us from the DCCA, State of Hawaii Securities Commissioner Office, and you're the educational specialist there, as I understand it.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So can you describe for our viewers what exactly does the Office of the Securities Commissioner do?
Sure. So our office, primarily, we are the regulating body for the investment industry. And the office itself is made up of 3 different areas. We have our compliance area or registration. So if you're going to be in that area as a professional or you're selling a product, you need to be registered. The second area is our enforcement. So if you have been a victim of fraud and you would like to file a complaint, you file it with that area, and then they will open up an investigation. And the third area is our education, where we do a lot of education and outreach with the public in a variety of ways.
Wow, it's so much work to keep track of within that department when you think about the licensing and the enforcement and the education. And I know that we've partnered quite a bit on the educational side, in particular with Hawaii's Partnership Against Fraud. And your division and your office in particular, and you personally, have been very instrumental in helping to get Hawaii's Partnership Against Fraud up and running. We were talking a little bit earlier about how many of the different agencies are working together in the Partnership Against Fraud. Can you talk a little bit about why it was important for your office to be involved and some of the reasons that you thought it was important to be involved in the Partnership Against Fraud?
So investment fraud has really become a problem here in Hawaii. And given that, you know, being a problem and we need to help the public understand the problem, being part of this Partners Against Fraud was really, you know, made so much sense. You know, we had to get involved. You know, we are providing the information so people can protect themselves, but those who are victimized know where they can go and help. And working together in collaboration with the private and the public organizations, it makes it so much easier to try to address this problem here in Hawaii. I mean, there's no one organization can do it themselves. I mean, you know, as well as we need partnership, we need collaboration, whether it's the outreach or the enforcement, and therefore, you know, this was just a perfect fit for us to belong to this organization and this Partners Against Fraud.
Well, we're very glad to have you as a leading partner. It's really fantastic, and I know that the Kapuna at the senior fairs, when our different staff go and they work together, they are very appreciative of the information they receive. You were talking about the concept of investment fraud as an area of concern, and when we're talking in generalities of fraud and scams in the community, a lot of times it's focused on identity theft or on telephone calls and actually just taking people's money and running. Mm-hmm. Investment fraud is a little bit more pernicious. It's really dangerous for seniors. Maybe you can sketch out exactly what investment fraud looks like. You know, what's a typical investment fraud or scheme case that you see someone call and complain about or ask for information about?
So one of the major areas of investment fraud that we see is really like a Ponzi scheme. You know, I mean, it's in the newspaper all the time. We know about Madoff running it and so forth. But right here in Hawaii, that is a really big problem, in addition to affinity fraud. And why it's a problem is because as an island community, many of our seniors trust. You know, they did not live in times where you had to lock your doors and you know, not trust your children or your caregivers and stuff. Well, unfortunately, times have changed. And therefore, you know, these type of schemes lure our seniors into a situation where they're, you know, you're not losing $20, $30, $100. You're losing your life savings. You're losing your retirement, where many of them depend on that.
Yeah, because
So,
they don't have a chance to make it back once they lose it. Once it's gone, it's gone.
absolutely, absolutely. So, helping our seniors understand that securities fraud is a problem and the magnitude of the problem can really wipe you out and can change your whole life and your family's life, and even in some communities, the lifestyle and how you literally think about finances. So it is a problem, and we see more of this type of Ponzi schemes and like I said, affinity fraud, because Hawaii, it's based on relationships. So you trust people, you're not checking, and so forth.
So now with the Ponzi scheme, that basically is where someone takes money from you in order to pay back someone else that they either borrowed money from or the investor that came before you. Is that the way it kind of works?
Yeah, so generally a Ponzi scheme is where you have the promoter, and the promoter gets investors, and the early investors, the promoter takes their money, and then they bring in new investors, and the new investors are their money is used to pay the older or the original investors.
And those original investors get payments or something that makes it look like they're getting interest and like they're making big money. Right?
Yes, so they're getting payments based on a promise that they were going to get these big returns. You're going to get 20% returns. So basically they take the new investors and they're paying the older investors these big returns, thinking that it is actually making a return. But the bottom line is there is no underlying investment. And that's where the problem begins, because unless the Ponzi scheme, they keep on bringing in new investors, you're not going to be able to manage when people start to redeem their investment.
I think it's really important to break it down to its simplest level for the viewers, because oftentimes it's by the time you realize you're into this, it's too late.
Yep.
And so it's good to know on the front end what the pitch is and what someone is telling you. If someone comes to you and says, I have an investment for you that's going to give you a 50% return on your investment over the next 6 months, that's probably something that people should look out for or be wary of.
Absolutely. Anytime they're talking to you about double-digit returns, these high unrealistic returns, the investor needs to stop, control the situation and say no until you're confident and you understand what you're getting involved with. And we always say the first thing is check registration. It doesn't matter who is asking you. It could be your son, your caregiver, your daughter, your niece, whatever it is. Check registration. Once you know that person is registered to do that type of business, which is an investment advisor or it could be a representative.
So that's like through the DCCA.
Right, and they can call our office and they can check. That would be the first line of defense that they would need to do. Then the second thing is do your homework. Really take charge of it. Ask the right questions. How much is this, going to cost me? What are the fees? What are the penalties? What are the commissions? Understanding all the different risks with that investment.
And so what if someone you start to ask those questions, someone starts bullying you and saying, oh, you don't need to know that, or why are you asking so many questions? That should be like a red flag, I would think.
Absolutely. That's a red flag. And if you can, step away from the situation and say you need to get back to them. Or we've had people that call our office and say, I believe I'm, being forced in this transaction. I believe I'm being bullied or something. And we can see, we can try to see what we can do to put them on notice that, what you're doing could be a violation of securities laws.
Well, that's very helpful, because I know that a lot of our local folks are very entrepreneurial, and so you'll have lots of opportunities. I was even mentioning that I had an opportunity that popped into my email box from someone that I knew that was looking to raise money for a project. And those kind of things are it's important for people to understand the protections that are in place, but also what the regulations are that are in place with the state that help protect you, and the resources that are available to find out the difference between the two.
Yes, and we're always available, through our education program to work with the public. We do a lot of outreach. Our office is on Oahu, but we go statewide. And, we hear all kinds of stories, from, the kupunas to the working adults to even youth who are being lured into various types of investment schemes. And many times there are really stepping stones for really the big fish, I would want to say. Maybe someone's trying to get to your grandma or your grandpa or your auntie or your uncle. So they'll say, hey, see if you're interested in this. And what, if it's good for you, you want normally, and most families here, they want to help their families. So it's like, oh, why don't you get involved? So we do see a lot of these stories.
Is that like what you were talking about before with the affinity kind of fraud?
Yes.
So can you explain what does the affinity fraud look like? What are some of the warning signs, and what exactly is the program or the approach that people should watch out for, so they know, oh, I saw this, the red flag should go up or the warning bells go off?
Yeah. So affinity fraud in itself is really using relationships or identifying groups to target in an effort to scam them, basically. So many con artists make use from religious groups to ethnic groups, athletic groups, maneuver their way into the groups, befriend someone, usually at the higher level. We've seen it where in a church group, they become friends with like the preacher or the pastor. And it's like, well, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. And so they start to engage and invest. And what happens is eventually, that's how they get in, and then eventually it's connected normally to a Ponzi scheme where the individuals are taking in this money, but they're not getting returns, but maybe the pastor, the one on the top, is getting the returns. So what happens is they all suffer. They all end up losing a lot of money.
I think there was a recent court case that I remember just within the last year or so that someone was sentenced to jail because they were caught doing that. Are there any particular stories, without naming names, that you talked about some of the churches and some of those others? Is there anything in particular that comes to mind, or a particular case that you remember that it would be helpful for people to think about or hold in their mind?
There's a variety of cases that we see where Ponzi scheme and affinity fraud is working together to victimize our seniors and our community at large. But one case particularly, is the Perry and Rochelle Gregg's case, which basically, in a nutshell, it was a Ponzi and it was affinity. And the craziest thing about that case is they were in a federal prison running a Ponzi scheme, and the wife, who was outside, was really pushing the whole scheme. And the unfortunate thing for Hawaii is they came to Hawaii and conducted their scheme, of which many local families lost money, lost their homes, and that was a really sad situation. But that, even when I was at the sentencing, the judge said, he's never heard of anything like it, and which is a very amazing story that, for local families, again, that because we trust each other, we're not checking, but they did not know that this person literally was operating it out of a federal prison.
This is one of those situations where it goes back to the meaning of the word con man or con woman, which is confidence scheme, where you're taking people into your confidence and getting them to have confidence in you, and then to believe what they're saying, and then taking your money without you feeling bad about it, and taking it and making you feel good about the reason you're giving it to them.
Yes, yes. And that's one of the things they prey on in the religious area. You're doing it for God, you're doing it for the greater good, it's a charity and stuff like that. So always check.
So if we think about those risks, and one of the things that families are sitting here listening and they're going, oh my gosh, I think that maybe we're in something like that, or oh my goodness, someone just approached us with that. We talked a little bit about some of the resources that were available, but what about the aspect of them feeling guilty or having some bit of shame or embarrassment about being lured into something like this? What are some words of advice that you would give folks?
Well, I think the number one advice, we would share with them would be, if you're not sure, call us and report it and let the investigators do their job. Okay, yes, we do hear a lot of situations where the families shame. It is a local kind of a culture where, you don't want to be shamed the family and stuff like that. However, if you call and you make the report, if it is a situation, then we can take it from there. If it's not, then you have you have some peace of mind that it's okay and that everything, is a legitimate way of investing. But I would say definitely call, report, and do your own homework. Do some due diligence. Do some background checks.
Because there are a lot of resources out there available for folks. I know that one of the things that we recommend is that consumers in general consult at least 5 to 7 different resources, different information before you make a buying decision, because not any one resource is going to give you everything that you need. You know, there are great tools out there, great resources, the Better Business Bureau website, the Scam Tracker, Yelp, DCCA website, Office of Consumer Protection. There are lots of different resources. But I know that there are some folks that may not have the computers available, and I think that DCCA just produced a new handbook to help folks.
Yes, we did. So the newest book, it's called Hawaii Fraud Prevention and Resource Guide, and it's 140. It's a 142-page guide. It covers a variety of different frauds, from consumer fraud to identity theft to healthcare fraud and financial fraud. And there is also a kupuna section in here. And in that section, we talk about, we talk story with Tutu, basically. And specific items like investment fraud or Ponzi scheme we talk about. And there's, the story obviously is a real story, but we changed the names and so forth. But it's a way of educating the public about, this is happening right here in our community, and this is a really great resource for them to take a look at it. And in the back, we have a great resource section where they can call and make get more information from maybe another organization, could be city, the state level, or even federal government, and report it, get more, additional information. But, I think the big thing about it is that there is resources out there, like you said, and we want to direct them, because this is really kind of a one-stop shop for fraud. If you want to learn about fraud, what it looks like, what it smells like, take a look at the book. We have it online also on our website. And,
So you can download it as a PDF and then print it, or if someone wanted it, do they call and can it be sent to them, or do they come down to DCCA to pick it up? I know that the Better Business Bureau has some available as well to hand out, and they're available at senior fairs as well.
Yes, so they're available online as well as at our office. So we have it in our lobby areas where you can just help yourself. Also, we have it available, online, where maybe they just want to take a couple pages. They can just look through the PDF and go look at it that way. We do have hard copies. There is a limited supply, but feel free to give our office a call, and we'll be happy to provide you a copy.
Okay, that's excellent. That's great. What a great community resource. And that's available free of charge, so you don't have to pay for it?
This is available free of charge, and our partners on the resource guide was part of the Attorney General's office and the Office of Aging, so and the DCCA. So together we put it together. We printed a limited amount, but we do have it available online. So
So a great resource not only for seniors but also the caregivers and family members, anyone that really, if you think about it, for the entire community. If you're worried that you may be a victim or someone's preying on you, it doesn't have to just be a senior, because it has good information on it for everybody. Absolutely.
It also has a lot of information also for working adults. We do hear stories of people, getting close to that retirement. They don't know where to look. I don't understand. I have this, whole bunch of money. What do I do with it? So it even gives tips on what you should do and where you should look.
It's interesting you bring up the lots of money thing. I'm reminded of a recent case on Maui of a mortgage broker that was engaging in some fraud, where they had a Ponzi scheme, and they were paying investors, because when people would refinance their house, they would ask them to take money out and reinvest it into the pool. And they're under federal indictment right now for that. But if people had access to information and had thought to say, geez, is this person registered to engage in securities, or what are some of the warning signs? It would have been really helpful for the folks that fell victim to that scheme.
Yes, and one thing I do want to make clear is that our office is, being that we're an administrative office, so part of the regulatory, we issue fines and penalties and can bar people from registration, However, we're not a criminal agency, so we do work with criminal authorities and work a case with them. So we do work a lot with the FBI, and I believe that was a case that the FBI, along with our office, and there's the other one I talked about earlier, the Griggs. We've worked in partnership with them to, bring these fraud problems to light, and hopefully, take care of it for we don't have other victims.
Yeah, because I think that in the particular with the case on Maui, that the way they got caught in the end were that people began to get suspicious, and even though they were getting the payments, they couldn't figure out how it was working, and so it took that first step for someone to report it and say, I think there's a problem, before the government entities were able to step in and take a look at it and review it and find out that there was an issue. And that if it had been reported a lot earlier, a lot sooner, that people had suspicions or were worried about it, fewer people could have been taken advantage of.
Yes, and that goes back to my point earlier that always check registration, because many times in these cases, if they checked the registration, they would have found out that that person was not registered to sell securities. Right there is a red flag that allows you an opportunity. Should I do business with this person or should I not? And that sometimes, will just stop the transaction. But when they don't check and they continue to go on with this.
So what's the difference then, just to dive a little deeper into that? The person was licensed as a mortgage broker in the Maui case, but they weren't licensed as a securities broker. So there's a difference between the two, but they represented they were licensed. So how's a consumer or a potential investor to look at that and say, what's the scope or what's the difference between the two?
So specifically, you need to be licensed to have your mortgage, and that is what a whole different area of DCCA. The securities, if you are soliciting or you're managing public's money, you must be registered with our office. So if anyone is asking you to invest, anyone is telling you, oh, we're going to take your money and we're going to invest it for you, we're going to make a return for you, we're going to manage it, we have control over it. These are specific tasks that a registered security investment advisor or a representative, that's what they do under that registration. If it's outside of that, okay, then you should probably question them and always ask them, are you registered with our office? Are you registered, with, there's another database, which is FINRA, broker check. Check on them too. Make sure that the individual, the firm is registered. There's also the SEC where you can check, sec.gov. So there's a variety of places to check. And usually that is the first point that if they take that step, I think that many people will find out that they'll have, and do a little background check. Check it out. Ask different people. Have you heard of this person? How's the, investment? Did they make you returns? I think
it's
a
more
lot.
than just how nice is the car they're driving.
Yeah,
because they're using other
yeah,
people's
yeah,
money to
yeah.
get that nice car.
And that's the classic. That is the classic situation with many of these con artists. They drive the nice car, they're looking good, they take you to the nice restaurants and so forth. But really, when you get down to the registration, if they're not registered, they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
And that's where we take it from education to enforcement, and sometimes the victims and the kupunas is where they fall through the cracks. And that's why we're hoping that through, the partnership and through educating our kupunas, that won't happen.
So in other words, if someone is in the state of Hawaii, they're asking someone to invest money in, some sort of investment opportunity or business or selling stocks or something like, or investing in other securities, they have to be licensed with this particular license.
Yes. So if you are a resident of Hawaii and you are, someone is, like I said, soliciting you to invest in whatever it may be, whether the products or business, they have to be registered here. It doesn't matter if the person is from the mainland. Say somebody's from California and he's calling here and saying, hey, Greg, I want to invest in my cookie company or whatever it may be. He needs to be registered here in Hawaii because the jurisdiction for us is here in Hawaii. So, and you are the resident of Hawaii. So if there is a problem, and we can go after them because they were here, soliciting a resident.
So mainland, international, anybody that's asking a local resident
They need to be
in Hawaii, they
registered.
have to be registered. And if they're not in the database as being registered, then you shouldn't do business with them. It's something that is high risk.
Yes, in general, that's pretty much how it is. Now, there are these different types of exemptions and so forth. But we can, the best thing to do, again, is call, let us check it out, let us find out, if that person, maybe there might be a situation where they got an exemption or stuff, but always call and check, because the problem, again, like I said, it starts at the registration. Yeah.
So the registration, that's anyone that asks you for money, anyone that asks you to invest in something, and that's not only folks that are on the phone or internet, but also family members would have to as well. So it's not like just, if a nephew or a niece or even your son or grandchild comes up and asks you to invest in something or gives you this great investment opportunity, it's something that they need to be registered as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that goes back to some of the affinity fraud, is because what happens in many cases we see is they're not actually registered, but because they trust. They trust the nephew. It was a family member. My auntie raised me. She wouldn't do that to me. Unfortunately, we do see many victims are victimized by their own family. And so, again, these are some tips. These are some ways to protect yourself. However, we do have those that, absolutely the choice is up to you, and you decide whether, but, there are ways to prevent you being a victim, and that is really the biggest way.
It's definitely doing the research, asking the questions,
Yes.
being challenging,
Yes.
right? That's like, I know that a lot of times that when people are coming at you like that, they're going to be in control. They're going to try and control you and tell you, pick up a pen, get a piece of paper. I want you to write this down. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And anytime that you're under someone else's control like that, that should be a big red flag.
Yes, and that's part of the con artist tactics, is to push you, is to force you into a conversation, or sometimes it's not just getting your investments, but it's getting access to the investments, which is a problem. And so
because then they're able to withdraw your
absolutely,
resources.
Absolutely.
And we know
or control it. This should go here. I should cash this out. I should, I'm going to roll this over. I'm going to extend this variable, this annuity, whatever it may be. Because if you have the authority, then they usually have access, and sometimes that's a problem.
And I think that's where you were saying that you want to make sure you have checks and balances, have other folks that you can rely on.
Yes.
Get an extra set of eyes to look at it, and don't be ashamed. Ask for help.
Yes, absolutely.
Any last words in the last 30 seconds before we depart for today? Sure.
I do have a couple handouts that I'd like to just share with everyone. And one is, we have this Keeping Our Kupuna Safe, and it's a kind of a handout of various helpful tips, and it talks a little bit more of Ponzi and affinity fraud. So for those who are interested,
And that's
they can
available
always
on the website.
This is available on the website, and they can also call our office. Another partnership we're also with is called Kupuna Alert Partners, which is also part of the Partners Against Fraud.
And we can get that on the website as well.
And you can get that on the website too.
Theresa,
Yes.
I really appreciate it. You've been a wealth of information. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us today on Is This For Real? Remember, always ask yourself, is it for real? Aloha.